My name's Howard Morin. As Jeff said, I'm with a group in Cisco called Technical Services Product Management. And so whereas Jeff and people in his role work on these really innovative and great new capabilities, we look at how do we take those capabilities and put it into our offer structure and get it out to customers. So what I'll talk about in the next 15 minutes or so are what do we as Cisco Services think we're going to be able to do with Intersight, how we'll leverage the Intersight connectivity that Jeff talked about, the benefits to our customers as well as to Cisco of having Intersight delivered diagnostics, and then of course another offer I'll make on top of Jeff's offer is we do have some limited availability of what we're calling CDX that we are preparing for the fall. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that and how any customers with the right devices can participate in that trial or in that limited availability. So overall, let's take it really top level. What we're looking to do with what we're calling CDX, which by the way stands for Cisco Digital Experience, is that no customers should be impacted by issues that Cisco already knows about or could have predicted. So the idea is we have a huge amount of information about our devices, about bugs, what's happened with the devices, what other customers have noted, and we have a knowledge base with all of that there. And what we want to do is take that knowledge base and make it available to customers so that they don't have to wait till something goes wrong and then call TAC and try to figure out what happens. But we can actually proactively look at their devices, look at how they're configured, bump that up against what we know about their devices, and then give them a report on what we think could be going wrong, what they're susceptible to, whether they've had impact from it or not. And then a second thing, although not related to this quote directly, is, and Jeff touched on this, we also think we can improve the reactive case experience, because what we're going to do is take what we know about our customers up front, make sure our TAC engineers are well aware of it, so that when they begin the engagement, they can do so quickly and get you to a quicker resolution. And I'll show you some early results from that as we move through this presentation. So quickly, when we talk about the Cisco digital experience, what is our overall vision? So as everyone in this room and everyone watching knows, customers have a huge infrastructure of Cisco devices. And within Cisco, inside of our services platform, we have a ton of information on those assets, on the customer profiles, on the diagnostic information, on security, best practices, et cetera. But what we haven't done yet really well is taken all that knowledge we have and gotten it into our customers' hands. So the point here with CDX is to use our connectivity through Intersight so that we can give customers access to what we have on our platform, and then they can use that. We can integrate that into their existing workflows. We can connect to their applications, and of course, if they want to come through Cisco and use our support website or tax services, they're able to do that as well. But the whole idea is to take that power of network data and make sure we're giving customers the best, fastest experience, and minimizing the number of times where they're actually reacting to an incident rather than catching it before it becomes a bigger problem where they feel they need to open a case. Great. So how are we going to do this? It all sounds great.
One question for you. The last slide, everything you were just talking about kind of sounds a lot about what you hear from just Cisco DNA and network data platform and kind of that proactive closed loop type paradigm. Is there any relationship there from back-end development team or what the product's going to evolve into, or are these two more separate platforms?
Absolutely. So they are kind of in separate tracks right now, but we're already working on integrating everything we have into DNA Center so that you'll have one-stop shop for customers, and they can, if they're using DNA Center, they can get to this functionality that way. If they're not using DNA Center, they still have access to what we're doing now with CDX.
Gotcha.
Great. All right, so just take you quickly through how we see this working with Intersight. So obviously we start with our UCS devices, which are all connected back to Cisco through Intersight. So we collect diagnostic data. So this could be show command files, show text, et cetera, whatever we need to do our diagnostics. I will say we do give customers the ability to control that. We're not saying with this connectivity, give us access to everything whenever we want it. We're very prescriptive about what we need and when. We can pull it into our diagnostic engine, which is, as I was saying earlier, where we house all that information we get from previous TAC cases. So whenever a TAC engineer helps a customer resolve an issue, we ask them to take some time, if you can at all digitize the steps you took and digitize what the remediation was. Then the next time a customer calls with an issue, one of the first things our engineers does is run their configuration through this diagnostic engine. So what we want to do is kind of cut out the middleman of the TAC engineer and give customers a chance to access the diagnostic engine directly through their Intersight connection so that they know everything that Cisco knows that could be wrong with their device and what our recommended remediation is. So that's the next step, right? The information comes into our diagnostic engine, and then we can return the alerts to the customer. Now, there's a couple ways customers have to consume that event. One that I think is really innovative is if they have their own incident management system, say ServiceNow, which is obviously a popular one, we can actually create incidents in their ServiceNow instance so that they're not learning a new tool, they're not learning a new system, they're not creating a new workflow to consume our diagnostics. They're actually just integrating it into what they already have in place. So we have a really solid integration with ServiceNow, which if I have time at the end, I'll show you a quick 3-minute demo that we have pre-recorded of that. But we also have plugins that are available for BMC Remedy. We have some other generic plugins that we can use if customers have a custom ITSM or some other way they want to consume it. However, not all customers have ITSM. Not all customers want it. So we do have our own Cisco interface that they can go to, our own UI that they can use. So not to overload you with Cisco acronyms today, but DSX, which stands for Digital Support Experience, is essentially our Cisco.com support site. But what we're doing is we're reinventing the site. We're trying to make it more of a single pane of glass for customers to view all information about their devices. And let me just go to the next slide here because I can show you a little bit about it, what it looks like. This is literally, we expect to roll out our first version of this in late June. So next month, if you go to cisco.com/support, you'll see something that looks more like this than what you see today on the support site. But the key things to call out here, one is we give you all of your notification information. We can show you all the events we found using our diagnostic tool. So we say, hey, here are all the issues we found on your devices. Here's what they are. Here's our recommended remediation. We give you information about your coverage status. So people who are familiar with My Devices, we're actually taking My Devices and we're integrating it into this DSX portal so that customers come to one place and they can get both their device information from a business standpoint, when's your last date of service, what version are you on, et cetera. But also, again, their diagnostic data. What are you susceptible to? What's been happening? So let me stop there because I know this is a lot. Are there any questions so far?
This is like Cisco CLI Analyzer on steroids meets Cisco NDP. Basically.
That's a really good way to put it. So yeah, CLI Analyzer is great, but it's one device at a time, right? That's kind of the limitation. It's not scalable. When we talk about using Intersight and we talk about using the Borg, used another internal term. We talk about using our diagnostic engine and talk about using Intersight. Yes, that's CLI Analyzer on crack. That's doing multiple devices all at once whenever you want.
So here's a question, and I think at the beginning I saw a slide that said something about customer-hosted versions of Intersight. In other words, private cloud hosting, that kind of thing. So if a customer has a high security environment, which is something I deal with, and can't run a connected sort of thing that's giving device information out and back in again, I mean, is that something they can do, and how much functionality do they lose if they do host it on site?
Yeah. So right now they can't do that. Okay. This is kind of our early versions, and I mentioned we have a limited availability coming out. That is feedback we've already gotten with our pilot customers and others. So there's banks, healthcare providers. They have that extra level of security with the data. So what we say now is, we're not pulling things like personally identifiable information. It's really about device configuration information, and it's nothing more than what we would ask them for if they opened a case. But we are aware of that sensitivity, so we are looking at ways, how can we actually take that diagnostic data and either host it in the cloud or host it even on a customer prem, but we're not there today.
Yeah, I mean, even if it was like a file you could pull down and sort of run it against your stuff and then send some sanitized information back out or whatever, but it wasn't real time,
Exactly. Yeah, these are all the things that we kind of have. We're tinkering with them, but I would not say we have them today.
Okay.
Are there any other plans that you know of to feed any other info into that? So like Intersight, you'll see info in the portal available. Are there any other Cisco products that
Absolutely.
did to?
Yeah. So we have a whole. So what we do with Intersight, we can do because we have the direct connectivity. For a lot of our devices, especially our legacy devices, we don't have that direct connectivity availability. We do have something we call the Diagnostic Bridge. We ask customers to install that, and then we can do this same analysis as long as they're willing to install that bridge and share the information. And that works for iOS devices, iOS XR devices, ASA, wireless LAN, and Nexus OS.
Okay.
And we have plans to add Star OS in the next quarter or so.
Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking like a firepower management center. You have all your health data in there as well.
Yeah,
You know,
and-
if you could have it all together.
Yep, we're looking at firepower, next-gen firewall, all that. So if you wanted like the long-term vision we paint, it will be all Cisco devices connected either directly or with a bridge, because some customers want a bridge even if they could connect directly.
Yeah.
We want to have all that available. We want to have on-premise diagnostics available. This is really exciting time, but it's still early days. So it's kind of here and there, and we will pull it all together.
I got a good one for you. What about from a Cisco wireless perspective? Namely, like on the controllers, which are now based on UCS platforms and prime infrastructure or even DNA. Would you be able to take any kind of analytics from those devices and bring them over?
Yeah, so with the diagnostic bridge for the wireless LANs, we can do that. Some of the limitations aren't actually because of connectivity issues. It's because, I was mentioning our diagnostic knowledge base. If you don't have a lot of information in there, then you can't give a lot of value to customers yet. Mm-hmm. So we have a big project now to build up that diagnostic database. So as that becomes, we call it minimum viable intellectual capital. You don't have to remember that, no test. But once we have that in place, then we can take those technologies and bring them aboard into these diagnostics.
Could we onboard the actual UCS hardware itself to get any analytics on the health status of the device?
Yeah.
Because we don't generally see that because our wireless controllers now are on a UCS platform, but we don't actually we see the power supply on. We don't know if fans have died or whatnot, or maybe need service. But it would be kind of cool if Intersight could actually kind of leap in and see.
Yeah. I don't know, Jeff, what are your thoughts on that?
For the,
For the 5520s and the 8540s?
so at this point, we're still evaluating if there's which other devices that we're going to bring on board for Intersight. There's no plans for those.
It's just because it's based on a UCS platform, right? So that's why it was like.
Correct. Yeah. Some of what we classify them as adopters. We just want to make sure that, as we look at the adopter platforms, there are certain requirements like can only run a certain version of firmware or don't touch this configuration attribute. So, going out to all of the various businesses, we're actually looking at those businesses now and what the rules are. But yeah, nothing to disclose yet. But you're right. It is running on a standardized rack server, a C series platform.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So stay tuned. We're talking now.
So you had mentioned iOS, iOS XE, and XOS. Are you using the smart call home capability on that, or is it additional functionality?
It's additional functionality. And I actually tell people that you can expect that we'll start talking to Smart Call Home customers about coming over to some of these other things. There's more capability. And again, as I said, we're bringing all these silos together, and that's going to be part of that.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
The CDX Connected Digital Experience,
Correct.
ESX Digital Support Experience. What's the relationship between the two?
So the CDX leverages the digital support experience for basically the presentation layer. How is the customer actually consuming this? Now, DSX is the presentation layer for things beyond what we do with CDX as well. So you can see like here, if you just want to know the status of a case, you could type that in here and just say, where are you with this case? That's not CDX, that's not Intersight, but it is part of DSX. But it's also for CDX, it's how we display our information to the customer so they can consume it.
And those are all the network devices that you talked about earlier.
Device. So it's like the My Device information, for those of you familiar with Cisco UIs, which is contract coverage, last date of service, version retirement, all that kind of things that customers need to know. I call that kind of the business end questions. And then there's my diagnostics, the diagnostics, which is more the technical end. What bugs are you susceptible to? Do you want to upgrade this software version? What are we seeing? What are we seeing in your devices compared to what we would expect when we look at our best practices and our diagnostics?
And did you say that was currently doing compute as well, or that's just networking devices at this point?
Networking devices.
Gotcha.
And this is great, by the way. Just hearing your questions helps me understand kind of the direction that people are interested in, and it really helps a lot. But
I'm just trying to better understand like the relationship between this and then Intersight as well. Like Intersight is, I've got a bunch of UCSC servers or something, but that's not going to also do my network devices currently, right?
Right. So Intersight is specific to UCS, and that's kind of where we're focusing this conversation. But yeah, again, the vision is to go broader than just have Intersight with UCS. So for our legacy devices, we have the My Diagnostic Bridge. For next-gen firewall, we have something called CSC Connector. We have for collab devices, we have yet another form of connectivity. So the goal is to get all these forms of connectivity into one pot, so to the customer, they're just connecting to their devices and they don't understand necessarily that there's 12 different ways that we need to do it. But we want to have all options available, and we want to make sure customers get their chance to choose what they want.
Go ahead.
How does this play with something like Prime then, where, say for the wireless environment, you're in there, you're adding all your APs, you're monitoring that hardware. Then you have Intersight, which eventually, if you want to have all the other types of hardware in there, is it kind of overtaking it? Are they going to be separate and kind of parallel? Or?
They'll be separate and parallel. So all the information will display again on DSX, whether it's UCS or wireless. But the method by which we connect will be different. So Intersight will be specific to UCS devices, but again, we have the diagnostic bridge that would be for wireless LAN devices.
Okay.
And eventually, hopefully, the wireless LAN BU will have their own direct connectivity.
Yeah.
That's that would be great if every device Cisco had just automatically connected back. Mm-hmm. But that's a vision that's a far way off, and there'll be customers who never want that, even if we have it. So.
Well, also it'd be a little impractical in that Prime. You have to buy a license for that, and then you'd have to buy a license for this to do both. So that licensing aspect I would think would probably deter some people.
Yeah. Well, and then we're also hoping just with our typical support contracts, a lot of this functionality will just be included with that, so that if they're just getting support on their devices, then it just happens. They don't have to go out and buy a second license.
And I think from a wireless perspective, that's actually kind of, you're definitely right on that, because that would just, that'd be a non-starter, right? When it comes to licensing, it's always been a pain. But if you're actually monitoring the base end, the core hardware itself, if you're monitoring that UCS appliance, which is the controller and or the Prime infrastructure appliance, and or going for beyond that, when we're moving into DNA architecture, monitoring that appliance, right? That would be my next question to you: is how are you going to monitor a DNA appliance, right? But if you're just going to, as a start on a wireless environment, monitor like those UCS base end appliances, that would be really cool, because Prime doesn't understand that piece. They do, but they don't. I don't think they will do it in the level that you're talking about or describing, right? So.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And we actually, so when we talk about the diagnostic bridge side of the house, we can actually leverage Prime infrastructure for that. So when we're doing device discovery and things like that, we actually plug into PI so that we can get the data we need to do the diagnostics. But yes, the diagnostics we do are more advanced by far.
Excellent, yeah. And that would take us off even on the collaboration side, right? I mean, just imagine how many devices are on that side of the fence, right?
Yep, and that's, if we're back here next year, I'd probably be able to tell you a little more about what we're doing with Collab.
Well, I look forward to hearing it.
The diagnostic bridge, where does that run again?
Well, it sits on a virtual machine on the customer prem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any roadmap for like appliance or anything like that, maybe for large deployments?
Not yet, although it can handle large deployments now. I mean, we've tested it with upwards of 30,000 devices, and it's been able to handle that kind of scale. So it's there. Right. So really, what we're looking at in the future, again, is can we bring it on-prem? Can we do more direct connectivity so that we don't have to ask customers to install things, because we get that? I have to install another thing on my network. I have to go through security. I've got X, Y, and Z. And then the breadth of device coverage. That'd be the third thing that we're working on for the future. Great. Oops, so I skipped one. So I mentioned that customers can either use the DSX screens that we just looked at, the UI, or they can use ServiceNow or a different ITSM to consume results. Once they see what those results are, they have three choices, but really two I want to talk about here. One is they can choose to act on it. They can say, oh, this is a problem for me. I want to fix this immediately. If they're in ServiceNow, they can put it right into their workflow. They've got maintenance windows in place. They've got their whole workflow there, permissions, et cetera. They can fix it. But a second thing that will happen is it could be that a customer says, yes, this is an event, but I don't use that functionality in my device. Or I can see why you think this is an issue generically for your customers, but we have something very unique about our situation where this is not an issue for us. We like this configuration, even if Cisco thinks it's not right. So then we give them the opportunity to just dismiss it, and they can say, ignore this event. They can ignore the event just for the device that they're looking at, or they can say, Cisco, I want you to ignore this event for every device that you run your diagnostics against. Whatever, it's totally up to the customer. We can accommodate either one. So that functionality is built in there. Helps over long term reduce false positives, helps make sure that the insights they get are important to them and actionable, and that they're not just inundated with, here's 25,000 things, good luck to you. So I spent a lot of time now talking about the proactive side of things, which is how do we alert customers to things that we know about already. But the great thing with Intersight and UCS is there's also a reactive component that really helps, which is we can have immediate access to the diagnostic data. So customer opens a case today, probably the first thing that's going to happen is the attack engineer is going to say, all right, can you send me the following show command files? It takes 20 minutes or it takes more than 20 minutes to gather it. You send it, it's the end of the day, so the attack engineer's gone home, they come back the next day and they say, this is great, but now we need a little more. So we call it ping pong, right, where there's a lot of back and forth before you can actually get down and start solving the problem. So a great thing with Intersight is customer opens a case and we can actually pull the device diagnostics, attach it to the case, so when the engineer engages, they're starting from a standpoint where they have a lot of information about the device. And so it dramatically increases time to resolution, and it really actually helps with annoyance. So a great reactive feature that we can associate with the proactive features that we offer through Intersight.
Now on that one, say there's an additional show command that they want, and then maybe there's another debug. Do they have the option to go ahead and run that command on your equipment? Or is there like a certain profile? You know what I mean? Like people are obviously going to have that, well, they can run commands on my hardware whenever they want kind of mentality.
Yeah.
And that's why I was wondering if you can give them permission and how that all works.
So I don't know if it's out today, but it's going to come very soon. Sorry.
Oh, I would say for the ability for attack engineer to run things, no, they can't.
Correct. They can pull like a standard diagnostic
Correct.
profile and that's it then.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, for today. And then
Yep. And so in the future with DSX, et cetera, we're looking for ways to say, you can run the following commands only on my device. Mm-hmm. And they check off if you can run them or not. We try to tell them, hey, if you don't let us collect every command we need, there might be things we miss because we can't check against it. But if you don't want us to see it, we won't collect it. So yeah, very important that we give customers control over when we scan, and what we collect.
One thing and the other thing, like, you'll have times where, okay, let me jump on a WebEx and I'll take a look. I want to run a couple commands, if that'd be something they could pull right through the platform. Like if you could permit them to run the additional.
Yeah, exactly. We're definitely looking at that as well.
Okay.
Yep. And we could have a whole nother session on platforms one day. Love to do that. Last thing to cover, because I'm actually looking at my time, I'm getting a little low. So, longer term as well, what we want to do is take all this information and not just have it available in our UI and not just have it available through customers who have ITSMs, but also just have it available through an API and let them build whatever they want to consume whatever of the data that they want, however they want to. So, those APIs are being built, and I don't have a roadmap date for them, but that is something that's important to us and that we are working through. So I think hopefully you guys have seen from this all these things. I'm not going to run through every one, but what CDX is going to do for us is from detection to notification, we can provide customers a lot more information about what's happening with their devices beyond just troubleshooting what they know or what they are experiencing. We reduce that ping pong that we just talked about. That gives us a faster time to resolution, and It also allows us to move from reactive to proactive. So let me really quickly cover these, and then we'll go to questions. So we just did, this is one sample. I'm not saying this is typical, but it just shows you the power of this. We had 2 similar cases, one where we didn't have any of these digitized diagnostics available, and through that ping pong effect, and you can actually follow it through the steps, it was about 19 days before we were able to take that TAC case from open to close. Very similar TAC case where we had the diagnostics available, 1 hour and 9 minutes. So it's really amazing what we can do if we have all this information up front and if we can get rid of the bottlenecks and the pitfalls that we run into sometimes. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because of time, but obviously customers get better business continuity, right? Their devices are up more often because we're finding issues proactively, not waiting things to go wrong. That lowers our operational risk. In addition, it improves our efficiency, right? They can spend more time managing their networks rather than looking for issues. Because another great advantage of using these diagnostics is not only do customers have an automated way to now look for issues, but they can find issues they didn't know existed because they don't know as much as Cisco knows about the devices. So we find more issues faster and help them resolve them. And then finally, improved efficiency through the integration with network management systems. If they have a service now, we can do that. We can do that integration and again help them manage their issues seamlessly. Okay, so real quickly, this is the most important part. I almost skipped it. So we're targeting our limited availability of this for fall of 2018. We're looking for somewhere between 50 and 100 customers to work with us on this and to adopt it. What we'd ask them to do, obviously, is to use this, to see what they think about it, engage the proactive model, do remediations, et cetera, and give us feedback. So that's actually the next slide. So what we give them is access to all this information in one place, and what we ask for them in return is that they evaluate these new capabilities for us. They attend sessions, give us feedback, and basically just serve as our testers. So obviously that would be no charge to customers if they want to participate in the LA, and I think a lot of really great features. So with that, we do have a couple technical requirements here. I won't drain this, but customers do have to have this, these versions of UCS software in order to make this work, et cetera. And so next steps, if you're interested, we have a email alias set up that you can reach out to. You can reach me here, or I'm over in the Technical Solutions Clinic, all during Cisco Live, and happy to help you guys get more information on this. And if you have customers that you think are interested, we'll talk.